It is 7 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Bigger, roll call, please.
Harrington.
Here.
Perkins.
Here.
Musgrave.
Here.
Brandon.
Here.
Kinnaman.
Here.
Kyer.
Here.
Delaney.
Here. We have a quorum. First order of business is the consent agenda. All items listed under consent agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the Village Council and will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and discussed separately immediately after consent agenda approval in its normal sequence on the regular agenda. What is the pleasure of council?
Move to approve the agenda
As presented?
as presented, yes.
We have a motion. Is there support?
I'll second.
Motion by Kinnaman, support by Perkins to approve the consent agenda as presented. Ms. Bigger, roll call, please.
Musgrave.
Yes.
Brandon.
Yes.
Harrington.
Yes.
Kinnaman.
Yes.
Kyer.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Delaney.
Yes. Consent agenda is approved. Next item, public comment. Members of the public can address council once recognized by the chairperson. Comments are limited to a maximum of 4 minutes for items not on the agenda. Council may extend this time by up to an additional 4 minutes by a majority vote. For items on the agenda, comments may be made after council discussion prior to council vote. Prior to addressing council, members of the public will please state their name and address for the record. Is there anyone for public comment? Yes, in the back.
Hi, I'm Dick Purcell. My address is 15290 Catalina Way, and I also own property here at 512 East Maple. Won't keep you long. Something that's been on my mind a long time, and I wanted to throw it out to you guys so you can mull on it and see what you want to do with it. In January of 2022, I tried to start a movement to put in the central fire suppression system downtown. And talked to many people about it, and everybody was in favor of it. But I'm not throwing any stones. I dropped the ball, and I didn't keep going with it. And we all know what happened in June. Fortunately, if you want to call it that, the wind came from the east to west rather than from south to north, or we would have lost the entire, at least one side of the town. So I guess what I'm asking you to put on your thinking caps and try is let's put together some kind of a committee. And I think it should include the council. I think it should include the township. It should include the Chamber of Commerce, the DDA. Right now, the administration in Washington has passed out a lot of money for a lot of different things. And I think maybe there's money out there. But somehow we have to collectively get together before this happens again and totally destroys us. And I'm asking you to get involved and take leadership on that, because we can't replace it. It's the only town we got. So I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Roselle. Anyone else for public comment? Yes, Mr. Feeney.
Pat Feeney, 210 Franklin Street. In November, I had asked council members through an email to address the Falk Road dump, which happens to be village property. What I wanted addressed was some simple basic things to be done. That was fencing, signage to be put up, and to come up with a long-term plan for the property. And I see that it could be being covered this evening on item 3, I'm not sure, but also look at the funding for future taking care of the dump. Mr. Delaney, you called me up and said that you would probably appreciate to see that in January, that December was a little too quick to do it. I agreed. I also explained the same thing over, that this wasn't the overall Howey Hills Falk Road issue, that this was strictly the property that the village owns, the dump. And that's what I was looking for, very narrow focus on that. So, waited for this January. Not on the agenda. Now, did I get an explanation why? No, absolutely not. Didn't get an explanation why. Very discourteous not to tell why that was why it's not on the agenda. You know, quite frankly, I thought at this point in time, you told us 6 months ago, give me time. Well, I thought 6 months was enough time. So here it is, not on the agenda. I don't even get the courtesy to find out why it's not on the agenda. You know, I'm looking at the 3 items on there. I'm not sure what the first one's covering, because it's kind of got a title to it that I'm not really, you know, sure what exactly. I do believe it's covering the offices. But, so that leads me to surmise why it wasn't put on that. And some of my observations would be, it's not something you're interested in. We have community activists who have shown no interest in it. They happen to be your backers, and they've never shown any interest. And please, before you get up and denounce yourself or anybody else, denounce that. That's a fact. You have not stepped forward and helped in the least. You know, and I find it that also it's not something that is in your guys' wheelhouse as it goes. It doesn't have pizzazz. Sorry, it's not. It's a liability. It's not something that you can say, look at us, look at what we accomplished. It's a long-term project. There's no thrills to it. You know, there's no, look at us, let's get the bandwagon out there. There's no one-off on it. It's a long-term project that needs to be done. I've continuously come up here and told you that. It's not, you know, it's not like this is something new. It, you know, lacks a villain. As we've seen in recent times, it seems we have to have a villain, someone to attack. Well, those people are long gone. The mistakes on that dump were done years ago, and there's just not anybody around to yell at. But, you know, that's not a way to govern, because, you know, it doesn't have the pizzazz. It's not a particular group. I don't belong to that group, so is that why I'm discounted, or is it because the last time I was denounced by certain people from that group that, you know, what I ask is not appropriate? I deserve to get an answer why that wasn't put on the agenda. And before you do a got me thing, Stacy Taylor, you spoke to on Saturday, you told her now you have a committee with Mr. Perkins on it, April, and I think Amber on it. That, you know, that's great. But once again, Stacy is covering a much bigger issue than what I was covering. Once again, I tell you, well, all I will say is, it's not leadership. It's politics that you're playing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Feeney. Anyone else for public comment? Ms. Watt, yes.
Good evening, Kristen Watt, 102 South First Street, number 3. I guess I would just like to say, because once again, I wasn't planning on saying anything tonight. I was just here to be supportive. But there's a lot of really great people in our community. Some I don't get along with, some I do. Doesn't mean they're good or bad. We all have passions, we all have gifts, we all have strengths, we all have interests, and we all have things that we are passionate about. Not one person can fight all 27,000 battles that are going on simultaneously. I would like to say that many people, including many people sitting up here of all backgrounds, I believe do understand that the Falk Road and everything to do with that is an issue. Our Shiawassee River matters. I believe that issue is something that every, as far as I know, state representative, congressperson, even up to the governor's office, has been addressed. They have went forward to try to talk to them and get resolution. On that end, I think that is where, this is bigger than our village. It's bigger. We can't even put fresh sidewalks in. I don't know how we're supposed to do a lot of the other things, the undertaking of that cost. But that doesn't mean that anyone in this room does not care about that issue. As far as, I don't know why it's not on the agenda here either. I wasn't here last month. I was out of town. And I would like to see that on the agenda. I agree with Mr. Feeney on that. I do believe it is a priority and there should be signage. I think that's something that is, should be non-controversial whatsoever. Everyone can agree on. Glad to see the environmental committee being kind of renewed or having an actual committee where brainstorming and things can be discussed and then presented to council. And I think members of the public should have an input on that. But I think we've spent the last several months, obviously, doing what we've been doing, and I'm hoping that tonight is we're all here. We have a full council. Welcome, Mr. Harrington, and I hope that things like that can now be addressed, and we can move forward and do it together. But there's about 35 other issues going on simultaneously. One's not important than the other, but they're all important. And it takes all of us to have our passions and work on those issues collectively and individually. So I do look forward to seeing that being addressed as well. I don't necessarily believe that anyone in this room doesn't care. I think it's just time to put these things at the front, on the front burner. So thank you very much. Have a great night.
Thank you, Ms. Watt. Yes, Ms. Barnes.
Good evening, everybody. Joanna Barnes, 3393 Harrington Drive. I think we're in our second meeting now, and already we've got a full council. We've appointed a new council member, fresh face. We've got 3 brand new council members. We've got a new president. We've got new people that are being appointed to committees. And we've got a revival of something that's been passionate to me. I think you guys have all heard me speak about it, the Environmental Committee. Many times I've spoken about this. And that's all been in 2 months. So I'm really excited to see what this council does going forward with the new energy, the new ideas, the new passion, the new invigoration that we have. Whether or not there's a point in pointing out what one person has done versus another in the past, I'm not sure what the benefit will or will not be of that. But what I do know is that when we all work together and we raise our voices together, when we show up at meetings together, when we write our Congress people together, when we speak up together, we make a difference, as seen by this council here together. This change that we have. This is from a community that came together and said, I want something different. I personally have written our representatives, our senators. I've spoken to them. I've emailed, talked to them in person. I've done all those things about Holly Water. And as Ms. Watt pointed out, it's such a big problem now that we need government leadership to step in. The citizens cannot do this alone. It's one thing for me, Jane Q. Public, who's concerned, to call. It's another thing for the village president or a village council person to call and concern or look for funds. That's something that maybe we want to look at as on the environmental committee and maybe draw on some more citizen interest on that too. If citizens haven't stepped forward to apply for that, maybe reaching out to some who have shown interest in the past. That might be something, because getting more ideas, more voices, more letter writing, the more noise that we're going to make, the more attention that Holly's going to get. We're not a big place. But I'll agree that there's some really big problems that need to be addressed. I just think that we need to now look forward to what we've got to work with, and this council is so different. Let's see where we go from here. I do think that the signage, Mr. Feeney's absolutely right. That's been too long. We know it. Mr. Perkins has been talking about it for I don't know how long. And you were on the old council. Well, now you're on the new council. Raise your voice with all these new people, and let's get it done, right? Let's make sure our citizens are at least notified if you can't change it. So thank you for everything you guys are doing. We do appreciate it as a village and as a township and as a citizenship together as we band together and try and make Holly like one cohesive place. So we appreciate all that you guys do.
Thank you, Ms. Barnes. Anyone else for public comment? Hearing none, seeing none. Next on the agenda is a presentation by Holly Township trustee, Mr. Derek Burton, on a proposed CDBG work group. Mr. Burton.
Yes, thank you. So I appreciate you all having me here today. What I will just cover for those who are new, just go over a little background of what I've learned from CDBG. I've been in talks with them for probably a year and a half now, trying to identify as many ways as possible to keep that money in Holly that we possibly can. You know, looking at all the various communities when I kind of started identifying CDBG and looking what the ones primarily in Oakland County use it for. A lot of Oakland County communities, you know, regardless, send that money back to the county, whether that be through a home improvement program or other measures. So I began looking at other counties and seeing what they did. And so I've really been able to gain some light. Now there's a difference between most other counties. So when the ones I was looking at in particular were mainly Genesee County. And the difference being is that they receive their funding from the state of Michigan. We get ours through the county. So that kind of adds some nuance to it. However, at the end of the day, this is all money from HUD. And then everything I'm going to share with you today, I vetted through the CDBG office. Again, I'll be covering kind of overview of what the CDBG funds are, some different ideas, and then you'll see the two different categories that I kind of highlighted to speak on some more specifics about that. So again, thank you for having me here today. So we'll just get right into it. So the CDBG funds are done on a reimbursement basis for those who do not know. So you will cover the expense up front, send that in and get reimbursed. They can be used within 2 years, which is very interesting, which we'll touch on here soon. And one thing that was very interesting that I found too is when I was looking at the township eligibility map, if you're looking at that, you will see that no area in the township is eligible based on LMI. So when I approached them with that, and I know it's been done in the past, is that the village and township can both combine funds, thus leveraging the amount. So basically what this means is the township and village can apply for the same project, increasing the total funds to be used, as well as embarking on 2-year projects, leveraging these funds to provide quality amenities for all residents. So the allocations, just a little background on how these come out. The CDBG office is always a year behind. And the way these amounts get decided, because this is something I was kind of unsure if this followed an inflationary rate or how these rates change, is it's actually set by Congress every year. So that's how these amounts come about, that all the communities get at a later date. So looking into program year 22 allocations, and again, these came directly from the county CDBG office. The village CDBG amount was $20,892, and the township CDBG amount was $19,307. So as I spoke later, you know, being able to combine these funds and then use them for 2 years, what we have is a 1-year combined total of $40,199 and a 2-year combined total of $80,398. So moving on to the first category, and you have some sheets in front of you, I believe. It's the park and recreation facilities. And again, these are all things that have been vetted through the Oakland County CDBG office and the grants compliance supervisor. So what this is primarily for, and the big piece of this you'll see is that this is low to moderate income focused of at least 45.08% LMI. Well, if you go to the map, if you happen to have a color map that was on there, under the eligibility map, you'll see a yellow section. Now you'll notice in this yellow section contains Bush Lake. And what is on Bush Lake is the Holly Township Beach, as well as Lakeside Park. So those being in that area with an LMI of 47.71%, those would fall eligible under the Parks and Recreation Facilities category. So some of the things that I have discussed with them, and again have been pre-approved by them, just kind of through preliminary discussions and getting at as many ideas as possible as to what we could use these funds for. These could be used for things like playground structures, pavilions, bathhouse. So that's what those funds can be used for. And then moving on to removal of architectural barriers, which is where you will find a lot of these. And the interesting thing about these is unlike the parks and recreation facilities that require a certain LMI to reach that category, this removal of architectural barriers does not. So this can take place community-wide, regardless of the income requirement. And really what this boils down to is anything ADA related. So, going forward, both I know the township and the village are both looking at new facilities. So with that, to save some money from the general fund, we could certainly look at the buildings having the ADA buttons to open the doors. Those could be used for something like that, saving general fund dollars in the future. ADA ramps if they're needed at a property. And then some more things that I was very interested in, which I've discussed, is the ADA kayak launch. And they're doing this in a neighboring community using CDBG dollars. And so when you think ADA kayak launch, basically what that is you have a large dock, if you will. And then to the side of the dock, there's almost like a manufacturing type stretch there where there's rollers. And for this, what they do is the individual, if they're wheelchair bound, would slide up there. There's a bench, and then there are different levels to this bench. So the individual would slide down the bench. They would have their kayak already on this ramp. They would get loaded in their kayak, and then they could pull themselves into the water. So that's what I'm talking about with that. Paved parking spot at any facility which may be dirt. So this one I specifically asked for in regards to the township park. So if you go into the township park, there's the pavilion there, and there's a large ravine, which makes it very hard to traverse if you were somebody in a wheelchair. So we would have the opportunity to pave a spot and then create a walkway across so that individuals who are, maybe wheelchair bound or have other limitations can get to that pavilion. And then the ADA pathway crosswalk, which is something I mentioned earlier. Now the thing that designates those pathways as ADA is that they're 3-foot minimum clearance width. So you got to have wheelchairs in mind when you're building these pathways. So that is what designates that. And then there are some other criteria as well as you're looking into that. So another big thing, which I really thought was cool, and I can pass out some handouts of kind of what these look like so that you are aware. And so basically you'll see there is a form of a adaptive swing, they call them. And basically what those are is for people who are in a wheelchair or people with other limitations who maybe cannot use a regular swing. That gives them the ability to do that. And, I look around and I try to identify places that have those. And one that I do know of that exists is in Linden, Michigan. However, the downside is if I were wheelchair bound, it happens to be in wood chips with a barrier getting to that swing set. So you're not going to be able to utilize that. But those are some examples. And actually the, I can't even think what the monkey bars there. I thought was very interesting. First time I'd ever seen that. But really making playground structures that are suitable for everyone. Because, I have a 6-year-old and 18-month-old. And if there's one thing they both love to do, it is swing. So much so that I have 2 swings mounted in the rafters in my basement. So, with that being said, to give that opportunity to children regardless of their physical abilities, I think is important. And if we can utilize these funds to do so, I think it'd be worthwhile. So those are just some of the things that I have gone through. My hopes is that we could create a committee or work group with maybe 2 members from the township, 2 members of the village, and obviously if we're talking to the parks, get the parks involved as well, and come up with some various ideas, because there may be several ideas I have not even thought of that we could certainly vet through that office and try to get approved. So that's kind of the down and dirty. I made some notes, or I'd have gone on for an hour. So happy to accept any questions that I can answer. Hopefully, in the future, if we get into this and the work group's approved here, it's approved through the township, I can get the individual I've been speaking with there as well to get more of the details and the more specifics ironed out. So.
Are there any questions for Mr. Burton?
Where'd you get the picture for the monkey box? That's a great idea.
Yes, it was on, I was just searching ADA equipment online or adaptive playgrounds, and that's where I seen it. And that was the first time I'd ever seen anything like that.
That's very cool.
Yeah, and there's 2 playgrounds in the state of Michigan that I'm aware of that really are suitable for all children, regardless of their physical abilities. And one is in Marquette. They just got approved. It's called Kids Cove, and they got approved through the MEDC through a portion or through a segment of CDBG. And then there's another one in Commerce, and that one is quite remarkable. And that one was created. The individual's granddaughter is wheelchair bound. He created a 501c3, so he didn't have to deal with all the bureaucracy of everything else. Fundraised and then got the playground set up. So remarkable. I mean, you know, because so many times you see these playgrounds and they will claim ADA accessibility, and which is true, but you know, then they have stairs. To I don't know, you know. So I mean, just taking into account, and that the reason I'm talking about that so much because that's kind of the passion of mine. Again, if a work group was created, though, we can go whatever direction that the majority of that work group would decide. But.
So
Where's that one in Commerce located?
I've honestly never been to it. I've only seen pictures, but I do plan on visiting it now
Can you
that
find
I.
it online?
Yep. It's and I can send you the name of what it is. But wow,
Okay.
that's remarkable. I mean, very large playground too, and I mean, there's ramps to get up every area of this playground. You know, and a lot of it too is it's teaching kids a lot too, because now you have kids playing with kids who are not necessarily like them, so they get to kind of witness what that's like. And, you know, kind of learn through life experiences. And that's the other thing when you're doing stuff like this is, you know, you obviously don't want to have a segment of, we have this ADA accessible stuff over here and then everybody else over here. You know, so you want to integrate that all in to where it makes sense and everybody's playing together.
Agreed.
So I have a question. Explain a little better why or how you think that the village and the township become a single entity and what that advantage is in this project.
Okay,
or process.
So through the application process, what it'd really be doing is, from what I've been told by their offices, say we did those monkey bars, just for an example, and say they cost a large amount of money. The village would then apply for the monkey bars, the township would then apply for the monkey bars, but what that does is, that instead of giving us, say, $20,892 for the village or $19,307 for the township, it increases that amount. So we can get more items with the money that we have, as opposed to going out in two separately like we're doing now, and not working together as a partnership. So does that?
You have talked to me
I have
about
talked
some
about
of
this,
this, and it felt like that portion of your explanation wasn't real clear here
Okay.
tonight, and
Yep.
so I wanted you to kind of delve into that. How that joint process looks. What in your mind does that really look like?
Yeah. So again, like I said, the village, and there may be projects that exist that would fall under this list, or maybe even something else, where it may be larger than 1 year's amount. So we would just, you know, and I've actually discussed this with the individual. We would apply for that. So say we were doing a ADA playground, just to make it a large, and we didn't have enough funds to cover it for the first year, you know, with the first year CDBG funds. So the village would apply for an ADA playground. We would apply for the ADA playground. They would be at the same site. So that's how you have the combination of funds being utilized for that. And then year two, once those funds are approved, then we would go and apply. You would apply for the ADA playground. We would apply for the ADA playground. And then we would finish the ADA playground. So that.
Okay, and so explain the difference. Each entity currently has about $20,000
Correct.
that we receive a year. And is this other funds or is this in replacement of?
So these would be the same funds that you had a discussion about last month, and I was encouraged to see several different, you know, organizations within the community that showed up for that. You know, you had Christmas in Action. There's Meals on Wheels. So that pot of funds is what we are discussing here. So this again is just another option to utilize those funds in different ways. So.
Have you, pardon me, have you already presented this to the township?
I had spoken about various specific projects and stuff. It was requested I come here and give a presentation first. That way we know if we have, you know, obviously means to move forward or not.
Okay.
So, and if I may, you know, one of the reasons I'm here today is, you know, obviously we just got done with this. Well, the thought process is if we can get a work group together, then we have, you know, a little over 10 months to really formulate a plan, get stuff together, get quotes, get approval from the CDBG office, and then really get the application together. So that way, like this year is December 23rd, whatever the date may be, this coming year, the application's ready to go and we just submit it.
I have a question. Do you think you will have support, I guess, from the township? I guess because we're talking about a playground, which is pretty much going to be in the village. Like you said, the beach there isn't enough to sustain a play structure like that. Do you think that the township residents would be okay with their funds kind of going into more of a village park?
So me, I'm an Outer Township resident. I absolutely think they will. I've traveled to a lot of places throughout this state. That sole reason I did was because of the playground. And to me, it makes no difference if it's technically outside of township limits or village limits. At the end of the day, it's close by, and I can utilize that park. And at least it's something tangible that they have that they can use here now, as opposed to any other ideas.
Mr. Burton, to the best of your understanding, is this an initiative that requires council action on our side or board action on your side, or is it something that can be handled at the administrative level with the village and the town, between the village and the township offices?
It could be, the reason I wanted to get the work group together was just free-flowing of ideas. But I don't see why it could not be done that way. At the end of the day, I just want it to get done, no matter how it gets done. So, yeah, whatever means that is, and so be it. But.
Yes, Mr. Walker.
So just some additional information. So this really is not a new concept. We have partnered with the township in the past and done projects. Most recently, we partnered with them to construct the large pavilion at Lakeside Park. This is not anything new. I think, in my mind, President Delaney, you were heading down the right path or line of thought that I have. I feel that this is more of an administrative function rather than a legislative council function. This really is what we do. We do CDBG every single year. We don't have any issues with spending the money. And most recently, we've used the money for sidewalks, which is one of the number one needs in the community. Sidewalks, roads, water sewer infrastructure, those are right at the top of the list of things that we address. So, I offer that just as information. Me personally, I'm not sure that we need another committee. We have lots of committees. If we have joint projects, I think we can still work on those. We have excellent relationship with the township government. They've chosen over the past couple of years not to use CDBG, and that's fine. That's their choice. It goes to other good uses in other places. But me also, I would like to see it used within our own community too. But I think particularly with Mr. Burton on the township board, that he probably has the impetus to say, we want to use this in our own community. And then I think that would drive a conversation between Mr. Cullis's office or Ms. Winchester's office and our offices to get things done. We have track history of getting this done. So, we have our money programmed this year into sidewalks, and I think our preliminary discussions are to use it again for that in the near future because we know it's such a need for us.
And that's fine.
Okay.
I'll be in talks.
All right. Any other comments or questions from council or staff?
I think the idea has validity to it. But I know that we have, Planning Commission, one of the things that we are working on is that master plan for capital improvement plan. And so that's a 5-year plan, actually 6-year plan. And so something like this could be worked into that 6-year plan that we know, the next 2-3 years, we know we're doing sidewalks, specific projects like that, but at some point we put something larger that's joint into that plan, and then we know as we're looking down the road and have time, almost a year or more, to work on something, that could be advantageous. And so maybe I would suggest that gets brought as an item to look at in our capital improvement plan, is here's a larger joint venture to accomplish something. I know it doesn't get it done in the next year, but it puts it on the radar and on a plan. So that might be one way to kind of approach this too.
Yes, certainly.
So for those of you that aren't new to this, Mr. Walker's correct. We have done projects with the village before. They came to us with a presentation on the pavilion, as he talked about, and we did that. When the CDBG funds come both to the township and to the village, we're allowed to give 30% of those funds to the organizations, charitable organizations, like HIA, like Holly Area Youth Coalition, like Christmas in Action, some of those different backpacks for Blessings in a Backpack, those groups. Every year we have a public hearing before we decide what to do with the money. That's when people can come and make presentations for the usage of that money. I want to clarify, because when Mr. Burton said we give it back to the county, well, we're not just giving it to them. It goes back to the housing program, which residents in our community can then apply for home improvement if they're of a certain income bracket and so forth. So it's not that we're just giving it back, we don't want it, it's there. We can also go back to some of that money that's still labeled Holly Township, pull that money back out if we find a project here. So I just wanted to clarify those things. If a presentation's made, then the board makes that decision. And I think what Derek's after is for a group of perhaps citizens or a group from the two to do some brainstorming for some of those presentations and bring them forward. Those don't require board action here. It didn't require board action in the township. He brought it out. We said reach out to the village and see if there's an interest. He wanted to spearhead it. So I just wanted to clarify some of those things for you.
Thank you, Mr. Cullis. Any other comments or questions before we move on?
I would say, obviously, because this concerns the parks, this might be something to bring up at the next village parks meeting.
Yes, and they would have been involved in the process. The only reason I was coming here is because they're kind of outside of the CDBG.
I'm just saying, because we've been talking about the different parks and stuff, and they're working on a master plan, so this may be a good time to hit them up too.
Yeah. And another option, as I said, it's 501c3 as well. So. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Burton. There is no old business to discuss. First item under new business, consideration of the approval of council action request to schedule a community development meeting. Mr. Walker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. So this request is to schedule that meeting. We have suggested a date of February the 7th, 2023 at 6 p.m. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss future Village Hall relocation. As you are aware, we have received formal notice from the schools that they will be demolishing this building in 2025 and that we will have to move. And so we have a couple of different options on the table, and but we need to have a starting point, a meeting, in order to start talking about these options. And so that is the purpose of this meeting.
What is the pleasure of council?
I would like to talk about the location of the meeting a little bit, especially an event or a process of this nature. I think there would be a significant amount of community interest in, at least watching or doing a public comment, which normally isn't in a committee meeting, but at least to be able to see or be a part of that. And this is scheduled for a conference room that is a small round table. I would feel more comfortable if that actually took place in here, as well as when I saw the one for the ethics, I was surprised that it got scheduled in that room as well. I would like to see both of those meetings actually take place in here, that they could be videoed or live streamed, and the public can actually be present or watch them. I have access to that schedule and have been able to look, and the 7th already does have another meeting in here, but of that same week, the 8th, Wednesday, is open in here, and the meeting next week on the 17th is open in here on their calendar. So that would be my only change or recommendation on that.
Council, are there any other thoughts on this item or on Mr. Kinnaman's proposals?
I agree that we should have it in this facility here so that more people can attend.
Agreed.
Unfortunately, I won't be available on the 7th.
So who's on that committee?
That would be yourself, myself, and Ms. Musgrave.
Okay. So if she's not
So-
available the 7th, are you available the 8th, Wednesday the 8th?
Yes.
So I would be happy to make the motion then to approve this for Wednesday the 8th at 6:30 PM, February 8th, to take place in this room.
Did you say 6:30 or 6?
Well, 6 o'clock is what's on here, I'm sorry, 6 o'clock.
I just want to make sure when we do the posting that we
Correct, yeah.
post it
So
correctly.
6 o'clock's what's in here, 6 o'clock is fine, so.
I'll support that.
All right, so we have a motion.
Huh?
Oh,
Township Parks uses this room on the 8th.
They are not on the master calendar. Yeah, that's not correct. Their stuff has changed. I noticed that and need to change my calendar. The chamber calendar needs to be updated, but the usage reserving for this room in the school district system has this open on the 8th.
I know I'm available on the 17th. I presume you are as well.
Right.
Ms. Musgrave, are you available on the 17th?
I'm out of town.
Well, the 17th is the ethics.
Oh, I'm
One
sorry. I
that I
thought you
wanted
had
to change.
mentioned the...
The location. I'm wanting to change the location
Ah.
of the ethics from also in that room to in here.
And we don't need a motion for that change. If it's consensus of the council, you have the date approved, we can just repost the location.
Oh, good.
If that's the consensus of council.
You know,
Good.
I can see if I can reschedule the 7th.
Well, the
That
7th
would work
isn't,
better.
the 7th isn't open in here. The 8th is open here.
Okay, okay.
I'm fine with the ethics committee meeting in here.
Yeah.
Right,
You
which,
too?
yeah,
Okay, I'll make a note in my phone. That's on the 17th, right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The 17th is next week on Tuesday. 17th of this month. And that's just a location change.
And we're
So
meeting
I'm happy with that.
We're meeting at 6 next week?
No, I'm confused.
Okay.
So
There's two different meetings, and let's
yes.
separate them and
Sure. Let's focus
let's
on
address
the...
one at a time.
Yeah.
Which is on what we're discussing.
Right, this
is
that we are
February 8th at
discussing,
6 o'clock.
February 8th, 6 PM
Got it,
in
okay.
this room.
Put it on the
Yes.
calendar.
So there is a motion on the floor to approve the council action request to schedule a community development meeting for February 8th, 2023 at 6 p.m. at the Carl Richter Center in this chamber. Did I hear support?
I supported
All right,
that.
support by Musgrave. Is there any further discussion desired by council? Is there any public comment desired on that item? Hearing none, seeing none. Ms. Bigger, roll call, please.
Harrington.
Yes.
Kinnaman.
Yes.
Kyer.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Musgrave.
Yes.
Brandon.
Yes.
Delaney.
Yes. Motion carries.
So I would just say before we move on, since we're talking about scheduling of meetings, so the clerk has the actual meeting notice for ethics, and her notice says January 24th.
That's
So
what
does
mine said
mine.
in my phone.
Really?
too.
Yeah.
January
Okay.
24th.
All right, so I just want to make sure we're clear
So-
on that date.
I'm still good for the 24th if you are.
Okay.
And I'm
I'll
fine with
need to
this
double
room.
check if this room is available the 24th.
Okay.
And of all nights, I left my phone at home. I have never done that.
In the event, I mean, if the 24th is not free in this room, it appears that members of that committee were available on the 17th. Would you like us to move it to the 17th? Since the room is free that day?
What did we ever do before these phones? I don't know.
Carried around a big notebook calendar.
I think I could do the
Write those
17th.
planners.
Can you, Amber?
Can you do the 17th?
Well, they
Yes, yep, I can
Which
do
is
the
next
17th or
Tuesday.
the 24th.
Okay. So try and get with us by tomorrow and or the day after and figure it out. 17th or 24th.
We need to make that motion tonight.
Oh, that's right. If we're changing the date.
Yes.
Okay.
So if that, the three of us are, make up that committee, and we're okay with the 17th. So do you want me to make a new motion to move the Ethics Committee meeting to January 17th at 6 p.m. in this room?
I'll support that.
I will second.
Oh. All right, so we have
She's done a support.
we have motion by Kinnaman, support by
Yeah.
Brandon to move the date of the Ethics Committee meeting to January 17th.
Which is 7 days
this room.
from today, next
Yeah.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
What?
Are we sure?
Yes.
Is there any
6
council
p.m.
discussion desired on that? Is there any public comment desired on that? Ms. Bigger, roll call, please.
Kinnaman.
Yes.
Kyer.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Musgrave.
Yes.
Brandon.
Yes.
Harrington.
Yes.
Delaney.
Yes. Motion carries. Item number 2, under new business, consideration of the approval of Resolution 2023-008, confirming the village president's appointment of Angela Wallace to the Village of Holly Planning Commission. I would just say to preface this agenda item that I, in conjunction with Mr. Walker, have made it a policy that when we are taking new people, not new to the village, not new to community service, but new to boards and commissions, new appointments, that we place this on the regular agenda so that that person may have the opportunity to step forward and introduce herself or himself, and for there to be council discussion and also public comment if desired. Ms. Wallace, the floor is yours.
Angela Wallace, as most of you know, I live at 709 Bear Street, just in case you need to know. On the top of each and every planning commission's agenda, the following is posted. The statement of purpose, which reads, "It is the mission of the Holly government to enhance our community quality of life. Our organization strives for quality services, responsive action to citizens' requests, and a cost-effective government. We promote citizen participation and proactive decision-making and environmental quality. Most importantly, we shall always serve the citizens of Holly. The Village of Holly will be a prestigious historical village that is a green residential oasis from the city and the center of commerce and activity for the region. My experience covers every aspect of this mission statement. I have a degree in early childhood development, and I taught Head Start, a federally funded preschool program, for approximately 10 years. I enjoyed my teaching time immensely. But when my family moved, it was time for a different career path. I gained employment with Anderson Sales and Service, a motorsports dealership, where I oversaw all internet sales and managed customer service. I assisted the president of the corporation in inventory and general floor planning. This involved knowing requirements of Bloomfield Hills ordinances and following very specific details regarding planning of the dealership. When plans were made to sell this dealership, along with made to sell the dealership, I oversaw inventory of this dealership along with Anderson Golf Distributors, which was located in Pontiac, and our jet ski and snowmobile and motorcycle storage facility, which was in Waterford. All the requirements required many hours in research and managing employees, keeping first and foremost up with each jurisdiction's laws regarding how we could sell off of our inventory and how we were allowed to display inventory while following strict laws and guidelines. After the dealership and the corporation were sold, I gained employment with Southeastern Michigan Salvation Army. I started out at an entry-level position, and I learned quickly and applied myself, moving into a key holder position, then to an assistant manager position. And within a year of my initial hire day, I was chosen to enter into their MIT program, which stands for Manager in Training. I was quickly promoted to the store manager of our Romeo store. I there learned many aspects of business, and I worked with Romeo personnel on planning and implementing best practices, best learning, and teaching. I taught Romeo business ordinances and allowances. Once the Romeo store was running smoothly, my abilities to lead and manage were used in our Walled Lake store, our White Lake store, and our Highland retail store. I oversaw approximately 250 different employees and made sure each store ran according to their jurisdictions and allowances. I left my business management position and career 10.5 years ago to parent full-time. I have 3 school-aged children and have made the decision that it is time for me to become more involved in my community. I currently volunteer for numerous Holly activities and try to support as many Holly organizations as possible. I'm currently a crossing guard for our Holly Police Department, manning the Grange Hall Patterson Crossing. I am treasurer of Holly Elementary's PTO, where I oversee all expenditures and account receivables. I volunteer at Springview Community Church in Davisburg and our Coffee Connection Ministry, as well as leading an Awana group for our youth. I have served as Community Outreach Director for First Baptist Church in Holly, and I helped coordinate Forgotten Harvest, which at the time of my departure was helping feed over 600 families a month. Everything in my past experiences have paved the way to now. With all my varied experience, I know that I would add value and knowledge to our Planning Commission and hope to serve more in our amazing community. Thank you for your time and for your consideration of the appointment to Holly's Planning Commission.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wallace. So as a reminder, proper order would be a motion and support, and then council discussion, and then public comment. What is the pleasure of council?
I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-008, confirming the village president's appointment of Angela Wallace to the Village of Holly Planning Commission.
We have a motion. Is there support?
I'll support.
Okay. Motion by Brandon, support by Harrington to approve Resolution 2023-008, confirming the village president's appointment of Angela Wallace to the Village of Holly Planning Commission. Is there any council discussion desired?
I have a little something to say, if that's okay, Mr. President.
Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to speak in favor of Angela Boston Wallace. She is a well-known and respected community member who has donated countless hours to her church, the food pantry, to our children, schools, and at local events. Our kids are friends, so I've had the chance to observe what a wonderful and caring mother and woman Angela is. She has a good family name for a reason. Angela is an exceptionally strong woman of high moral character, with a loud voice, a sharp intellect, humble spirit, loving heart, and a stiff backbone. She's well equipped to learn the processes of Planning Commission, as she is such a frequent flyer at the council meetings, which is further evidence of her concern for this village. She has sat in the audience long enough.
Thank you very much. Anyone else for council comment?
Yes, I have a comment.
Yes, Ms. Musgrave.
It's my understanding that there were 2 applicants for this position,
That is correct.
and as Pro-Tem Brandon had suggested, that we had a committee, the 2 fire chiefs, Chief McGee and Jeremy, to interview both of these candidates, and that it was recommended that the other candidate be selected. Is that true?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Can I ask why you would not go with what the other people had recommended?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the reasons for my selection have been mentioned both by Ms. Wallace and Ms. Brandon. I was looking particularly for someone who had length of service in the community, someone who was a familiar face, not just by virtue of being around and living in the village, but also by virtue of having participated very actively for a very long time in village activities, including government activity such as our meetings. I think Ms. Wallace has demonstrated many, many times her ability to think critically about the issues in question and to do research and educate herself so that she can then educate us as to what would be the best, the most prudent course of action, the course of action that is most advantageous to the village and our community. So that was really what I was focusing on when making that selection.
Question, and I don't know the answer to this. Being a crossing guard for the village, isn't that an employee of the village?
Mr. Walker, could you advise on that?
Yes. However,
That in the charter?
no, the mere fact of being an employee for the village does not prohibit somebody from serving on a board or commission in and of itself.
Okay, I did not know.
No.
Thank you, Mr. Walker, for that clarification.
Good question.
Any other council comment desired? Is there any public comment desired? Yes, Ms. Barnes.
Joanna Barnes, 3393 Harrington Drive. Angela Wallace and I actually had an interesting meeting. The first time that we met, she really didn't remember it. It was at First Baptist Church when my husband and I had gone out searching for a new place for us to worship. And she was one of the most warm, gracious. She made an imprint on me. My husband specifically really remembered her. And that Christian mentality that she has about service and caring for others, she carries it really forward through her whole aspect, all of her life. Service, honesty, integrity, thoughtfulness. And then we actually had a later interaction where we had a difference of opinion over masks. And it wasn't when we got into a fight, but we definitely had Mr. Perkins was there. It was in front of the school. It was out here. We all had a little difference of opinion about it. And Miss Wallace came back later that day and brought us all water because she wanted to make sure that we were all hydrated and taken care of. Even though she had had voices raised at her, and she didn't, and we ended up talking at the end of the day, and now we're dear friends because it just we actually had the same understanding. We just needed to have a conversation. Angela will take the time to come back and listen to all sides and see, okay, what is going on? And she knows so much about our community that she knows people's histories and has grace and compassion for it. And she also knows the history of our community and has grace and compassion for it. And she blends all those things together in such a way that she really represents like what Holly embodies to me, right? Which is standing up for each other, taking care of each other, bringing out the best, being smart, making good choices, taking care of our community, and doing it with love and compassion. And if that's not what we want on our planning commission, what else are you looking for? I don't know much about the other candidate other than obviously I know Chief McGee and Chief Narsh. And if they suggested that person, then I have no doubt in their qualifications. But I also know that Chief McGee and Chief Narsh know Miss Wallace, and they would really speak very highly of her, and have spoken very, very highly of her. This could have come down to a coin flip, and just, we have to pick one, you guys. It doesn't mean that that's necessarily who you decide. You take all the factors into consideration, and I appreciate that, because Angela Wallace is somebody who maybe sometimes would be left in the shadows because she isn't the loudest voice until she needs to be. And that's what we want, is somebody who's up there fighting when we need it. She'll do that for us. So I appreciate the appointment, and I really hope that council will take this opportunity to appoint somebody of such stellar character, of such stellar background, and of such stellar qualifications to such an important position. I couldn't see any reason why you would not do so. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Barnes. Mr. Walker, you had a comment?
So just a correction. Actually, I was corrected by Mr. Gildner, who, that's why we have him here. So I was correct pursuant to village charter. It is not a prohibitor. However, pursuant to the Michigan Zoning and Enabling Act, an employee of the village is not permitted to serve on a board or commission. Correct?
It's the Michigan Planning Enabling Act, yes. And so when that discussion was raised, I pulled it up on the phone just to verify, and for those who care, it's section 125.3815 of the Michigan Planning Enabling Act.
One more time, please.
125.3815, section 5, and it reads, except as provided in the subsection, an elected officer or employee of the local unit of government is not eligible to be a member of the Planning Commission.
Is it appropriate and necessary for me to retract my motion?
Yes, Ms. Wallace.
I work, my paycheck comes from,
Yeah, please approach.
my paycheck actually is from the village, but I actually work for the schools. So does that matter? I'm just asking because I don't know the answer to this. The village is reimbursed from the schools for my pay, so I don't know if that makes a difference or not.
I mean, I would think if they're paid, if you're paid by the village, you're an employee of the village, regardless of how that, that flows. I don't know any other way to consider it.
It's a good question, though.
Hmm.
As I was saying, is it appropriate and necessary for me to retract my motion?
Right. I think the appropriate course of action would be for you to retract your motion. And I do believe Ms. Brannon only need say that she rescinds her motion.
That's true, and if it was seconded, as long as the second goes along with it, that's fine. That's right.
Pardon me. Ms. Wallace, I'm assuming you don't want to quit your job.
I would consider it if this were to go through. I absolutely would.
Okay.
So
I believe that. Well, here's a legal question. If we were to vote in favor of Ms. Wallace to be appointed to this commission, and she thereafter quit working for the village, would she be validly appointed to the commission, or does that need to happen in the opposite order?
So it could be a motion that's conditioned on her no longer being an employee, so that if she resigns that position, she's in. If she doesn't, she's not.
Okay. So, Ms. Brannon, would you like to amend your original motion?
I would like to amend my original motion and instead motion to approve the resolution of 2023-008 confirming the village president's appointment of Angela Wallace to the Village of Holly Planning Commission pending Angela's resignment from her current job.
And Mr. Harrington, you maintain your support for that?
And I maintain support.
Okay. So we have an amended motion and support. Ms. Bigger, roll call, please.
Can I ask a question first?
Yes.
Would this not have to wait for her to be appointed based on the resignation?
That's what we just asked,
No, we didn't
council.
set a date, say a date or a time frame of when it would have to occur. That's what I'm saying.
I think from the way I stated my motion, if I may, that she wouldn't be able to be sworn in until she quit, and therefore not able to attend a meeting until she's sworn in.
All that would be true. That's just what would happen as a natural course of that motion.
Sure.
So should I further amend my motion to include before the date of the next planning commission meeting if a meeting is set?
Self-explanatory.
Right.
Self-explanatory.
Right, yeah.
Self-explanatory, don't need to
Yeah,
amend.
well, because otherwise, it's an open-ended. I think that's what you're referring to is,
Yeah, 'cause-
you know, if Angela thinks, well, I'm going to wait, and then 2 or 3 months down the road, we still haven't filled the position, but she's in a pending mode.
Right.
We need
No, it's and/or.
that time frame. So I think a time
It needs to
restraint.
have a time frame on it.
When is the next meeting scheduled for?
What's the actual date?
25th, I think.
The 25th?
Of this month?
This month, yes.
I would like to amend my motion. Again. I would like to make a motion to consider the approval of Resolution 2023-008 confirming the village president's appointment of Angela Wallace to the Village of Holly Planning Commission pending Angela quits her job with the village by January 25th.
And I will second.
Okay. We have a doubly amended motion and support. Ms. Bigger, roll call vote, please.
Kinnaman.
No.
Heyer.
Yes.
Perkins.
No, the kids need you more than the planning commission do.
Musgrave.
No.
Brandon.
Yes.
Harrington.
Yes.
Delaney.
Yes. Motion carries. Next, under new business, consideration of the approval of council action request to contract with Rowe Professional Services to apply for funds. Mr. Walker.
Yes, thank you. So water main and sanitary sewer infrastructure, those are both in need of repair and or replacement within the village. As many of you know, and we've discussed in the past, some of our water main and sanitary sewer is in excess of 50 years old. And so while we've gotten good service out of it, there is a lifespan for everything. And so we're fortunate to be where we're at, but it is in definite need of replacement. What staff has been doing, along with Mr. Doug Scott, who is with us tonight in the audience from Rowe Professional Services, who serves as the village's contract engineer, searching for funds to assist us with these, because as I said, these are not a drop in the bucket, pardon the pun with the water, but these are huge costs when we get into these. And so the staff, along with Mr. Scott, we've identified funds through the State of Michigan revolving funds for both drinking water and sanitary sewer. It involves an application process. We did complete the initial application process, but we're at the point now that there's a additional phase to this in which more detailed application and information has to be supplied to the state, and it's required that we have certain expertise and engineering reports to go along with these, that we need the assistance of engineer. So the amount of funds that we've applied for are $15 million. Now, does it mean we'll get $15 million? No. but we are eligible to receive something, and so we need to identify what we can get, and then we can determine where to spend it, where to address the issues. And so we had to list projects, which we did in the application. You'll see that. The funds that we could receive, really, the statewide program, are split up into two different categories. One is a grant category, to where the money would just be granted to the village. In order to be eligible for that, you have to be in a economic distress type situation. It does not appear the village qualifies for that. Mr. Scott can speak to that a little more in just a moment. So we would be looking at the area of low interest loans. But I think this is something that we need to look at going forward. The cost on this for road professional services assistance is $22,900, and he has it all broken out and specified where the costs come from, and has justified those. And just from experience in this field, the $22,900, while it seems like a lot of money, that is the cost of doing business. So you might ask, or I was asked, why Rowe? Why do we use Rowe for this? And the reason is, at this present time, Rowe Professional Services is the engineering company that represents the village, and they were selected previously through a selection process. And so had we selected a different engineering company down the road, or previously, then that company would be here. But Rowe assists, part of their contract with us was that they were to assist in the identification of these funds, and then completing application, and then obtaining these funds. So that's the reason that Rowe is here, and as part of our proposal. Doug, if you have any additional information, maybe you can explain the process a little more in depth.
Thank you. Doug Scott from Rowe Professional Services Company. And I think, Mr. Walker, they have the proposal in front of you. Have a chance to review that.
Yes.
So as Mr. Walker mentioned, we back in October, we put together a notice of intent for the village that basically just said that you're considering looking at these projects, and we outlined the projects that are listed in that first page there, as far as the first section there is CWSRF, that's Clean Water State Revolving Fund. That's the actual sanitary projects on there, and those are the projects that we identified along with Mr. Walker and Mr. Clausen, basically working together to identify the projects that we thought made sense for the village to proceed with. And then the projects listed under the DWSRF, that's the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. Those projects were on the water side there. And so, as Mr. Walker mentioned, we submitted that basically notice of intent, and the next step in the process is to put together what we call a project plan, and that outlines basically the project. It also has, I've outlined the information that's included in there on the third page there, is basically, community background, existing an evaluation of the existing facilities, a summary and stuff of the existing facilities, a demonstration of the project needs, and description of the projects themselves, and that goes through and looks at alternatives to the various projects, and also puts together a approximate cost estimate for the projects. And so there's, what you end up at the end of the day is a document probably about an inch thick as far as all of the information that ends up going into the state with that. And there's some parts that the village staff will end up helping us with as far as financial records and stuff like that as well. And so that's what the next step would be. One of the things that I guess Mr. Walker alluded to it, but I wanted to make sure that council is fully aware of, is all these funds are administered through Michigan Environment, Great Lakes and Energy Department there, the former DEQ. on that. And so the next few years, they're also administering the American Rescue Plan funds and the bipartisan infrastructure law funds that are primarily grant funds. And unfortunately, most of those grants will go to what the state is referring to as overburdened or highly overburdened communities. And unfortunately, the village does not qualify for those. I guess fortunately, unfortunately for grant funding. But so we don't anticipate it. I mean, there's always a possibility, but we don't anticipate that the village will score high enough to be able to qualify for those grant funds. And as far as the scoring criteria, on the second page there, we list that's Eagle's scoring criteria that they have published and stuff on that. So there's basically a 100-point system that they use for both of the both the drinking water and the clean water sections, and they basically, as you can see there, they would award up to 25 points for looking at the drinking water, up to 25 points for the regulatory compliance, if you're bringing things back into compliance, if you have a consent order and stuff like that that you're trying to address, and then if you're protecting the public health, in drinking water quality standards, improving infrastructure, and affordability. The affordability is the overburdened and highly overburdened points. And so you can see 25 points right off the bat you don't qualify for. So the communities that do are going to end up primarily getting those grant funds. So now if you happen to score the other 75 points, then there's a possibility that you would qualify for grants and stuff on that. But it's the village would have to have basically violations and stuff like that that you're trying to correct at that point, and so you're not going to fully score all the rest of the points either on that. But as Mr. Walker alluded to, chances are you would qualify for low interest loans and stuff on that. And so I did put together in the slides that you were provided as well, basically where, just looking at it from a standpoint where we thought, evaluating where the village is and the projects that we had identified, we kind of just went through and took a stab at what your scoring would be and stuff on that. And so that's if we're looking at the drinking water revolving fund there for water, we estimated you'd probably score someplace in the 50-point range out of that 100, based on the fact that you are doing facility upgrades and basically trying to improve compliance with the regulations, and also looking at possible lead service line replacements. The projects that we identified there are where, if the village does have lead service lines, those would be the areas that we would anticipate that they would be in. So, and then also we looked at basically treatment upgrades to address water quality. A couple of the projects that we looked at there would be helping your treatment process as well, so you get some points there. And then basically your asset management plan implementation, basically you're working on projects that have been identified in your master plan as far as capital improvements and stuff on that. So we were estimating you'd be someplace in that 50 points out of 100. Again, that's probably not high enough for grants. Not saying it's not, but just to give you an idea, the state, once they started talking about the fact that the grant funding and stuff is going to be administered through this program, they had over 500 applications. 500 communities put in applications for funding on that, and they say that they're well over, I think it was well over $5 billion is what they they were, I'm looking at my notes here, should have said. They, anyway, significantly more than the program will be able to fund at that point. And so there will be definitely communities that apply for this and won't even get a offer for a low-income loan on stuff as well. So just, this is the way that the state is going to be implementing the funds that are available for the next 3 years. They've told us, and so this is how they're going to be distributing those funds on that. So done a lot of talking. I guess I'll let you guys ask me questions, I guess, at that point. So
Any questions from council?
I just make a point that if we don't use this opportunity, then we benefit nothing. I mean, there's money out there. If there's any chance of getting a hold of it, when you see the numbers that are on here for those repairs, we're talking, that's huge amounts of money that we don't have and won't have. So I'm all for it.
It's worth at least making the ask.
Yeah, part of it just
Or something else coming down the road.
Right.
Being
Part of it
prepared
is
for.
we always, you come to a community and say it's going to cost $20,000 or $22,000, whatever, just to get in the game, and there's no guarantee. But that's, unfortunately, that's the way the state has set up the program, is that you have to do so much effort to be able to, they're trying to get some buy-in from you as well. So.
Well, $20,000 is perfectly average for project plans. It was me that called Mr. Walker and said, I think it's important to remind the council and the public why we're not soliciting bids. What's our relationship with Rowe? Why are we just going with, because $20,000 is a lot. And I just wanted to reiterate that we've got a standing relationship. Rowe's familiar with our systems, with our plans, familiar with Holly, and they're well equipped, and 20 grand is perfectly average. Now, assuming that we don't get the grants because we're not overburdened and we get this low interest loan, when are our current bonds going to be paid, and how will that low interest loan be paid back?
So initially, if we were to receive the money right away, of course, we would be obligated to start making payments right away. So we would do that from existing fund balance or funds taking in through the water and sewer system. Our current bonds are set to expire 25 and 26. But I think we've talked before in several public meetings, because it's no secret, it is administration's opinion that the money collected for bonds is not just going to go away. I think that we've already asked Rowe to start working on the numbers for a new set of bonds. Now, will it be the same amount as what was bonded the first time, $18 million? Absolutely not. It will be somewhere around half of that, or maybe even a little less, but if I had to guesstimate, I would say half. And so that means your debt service charge would drop correspondingly. And your debt service charge is at $37.05. So is it going to drop right in half? It's going to be really close. I can't give you an exact figure until we make a proposal to purchase or to borrow money through the bonding process. And it'll depend upon prevailing interest rates and just a lot of factors. But we are looking at dropping the debt service charge for those bonds, but unfortunately, I don't see any way that they can go away, but they will decrease.
Nobody wants to talk about raising the water bill, but we also don't want to become a community that qualifies for overburdened grants. We need maintenance. It doesn't just fix itself. So that's just something I wanted to point out. But do we have any leads on other grants that we might qualify for?
Not at this time. We've applied for some. If you remember when we did the North Saginaw Street project, that was on grant through MDOT, and that were grants again that we identified with Mr. Scott and Rowe. So we're on the constant lookout for these type of grants. They're highly competitive. We think we have opportunity with this one. If for some reason we get the word we don't, we will continue on. But we want to be cognizant that we're just not because it's $20,000 at a crack, that we're not just throwing money away. And so we try to be very targeted with our request.
Thank you.
Yeah, and part of that too is these dollars would be for 2024, construction of 2024. If for whatever reason you don't qualify, we submit the application and you don't qualify in 2024, basically that same application, Eagle has said, you know, with just a little bit of tweaking, can be submitted again in 2024 for $20-25 as well. So the bulk of that upfront work is going to be able to be, you know, if you don't receive financing in 2024, could be rolled over in an application for the next year. So.
And that wouldn't have an extra cost, or maybe just a little bit of an extra cost to
right,
tweak, not another
yeah,
$20,000.
I mean, the only reason it would change drastically is if, for whatever reason, we said, well, these aren't the 3 projects, we need to go with these other 3 projects. And so that would be we'd have to reevaluate projects. But assuming that these are the projects that the village wants to move forward with, correct, it would just be basically updating some of the accounting data and stuff like that and resubmitting it. So.
Thank you.
Is there any further questions or comments from council? Is there any public comment on that issue? Yes, Ms. Barnes. Thank you, sir.
So I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. Joanna Barnes, 3393 Harrington Drive. You talked about Holly not being a community that is in hardship, which I agree with the exception of the Falk Road situation, which Stacy Taylor has been spearheading, and she's got all the information. And I wonder, the threat to our aquifer has been documented by Eagle. It's been something that has been documented in multiple different studies, from the PFAS that's there and what could potentially happen if this dump doesn't get handled, and how that aquifer, the threat can grow exponentially for our community and those surrounding. And I wonder, is that something that's being used as a factor in this to decide our vulnerability? And if not, is it something that can be, because that dump exists, it's not going away, it is threatening our aquifer, it is a problem, and the person that's been spearheading it has not been, our council has been Stacy Taylor and her Falk Road committee, so maybe that's who you have to get the information from, but it's not something that should be ignored. That's definitely the case.
Yeah, and I guess with that, as far as the overburdened criteria and stuff on that, they look at the village as a whole on that, unless you were specifically targeting a project in a portion of the village that was overburdened, and you could do studies like that. But I don't, you know, most of the overall projects that are listed here are the larger dollar projects are at your plants and stuff on that, so they're serving the whole village on that. We can definitely take a look at as far as the aquifer and stuff on that, as far as where that is in relation to the wellhead protection and everything on that. You know, it's definitely something we can look into at that point. So.
Any other public comment on this item? Yeah. Oh. What is the pleasure of council?
I'll make a motion that we approve the contract with Rowe Professional Services in the amount not to exceed $22,900 to complete the required project plans and assist with application for funds from the state of Michigan Clean Water and Drinking Water State Revolving.
I'll second.
Motion by Musgrave, support by Perkins, to approve the council action request to contract with Rowe Professional Services to apply for funds not to exceed $22,900. Ms. Figger, roll call vote, please.
Heyer.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Musgrave.
Yes.
Brandon.
Yes.
Harrington.
Yes.
Kinnaman.
Yes.
Delaney.
Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Reports, Mr. Walker.
Thank you. So you have my written report in your packet. Just for the benefit of those in the audience that don't have the written report, largely it speaks towards the website redesign and the selection of a vendor. And so we are in the final stages of selection of a vendor to redo the village's website. No question, it needs to be redone, and it's something that we intend to address quickly. And so that will be done. The DDA is also in the process of redoing their website, and they will carry a separate website, but we'll have a link on the village's website. Their website, just so there's no confusion, will contain business listings and information relative to the business district and businesses. And so that really is something, there was portions of that were on the old village website that really are more appropriate on the DDA website. So just so you know, that's where that's heading. The other thing that I wanted to address, and I know that this won't answer Mr. Feeney's questions completely, or perhaps from whom he wants the answer from. I don't say that only because he said that before, but just so that everybody knows. So, and we spoke about this at the last council meeting. So we are waiting on the state of Michigan to finish testing specifically for PFAS and PFOA at the dump site. They have drilled additional well test sites, and they are completing that testing. Once that testing is completed, Ms. Etheridge, who is our representative from Eagle and is in charge of that testing process, intends on holding a public meeting and will publish a formal report as to their findings regarding that. Just this week, Clerk Treasurer Bigger received a report from Applied Sciences, or Environmental. I was thinking back to my old community college days, Applied Sciences, but Applied Environmental, who they have completed testing for metals and other chemicals. And so their findings are that there is nothing significant happening. And their recommendation at this time is to continue monitoring. And so that's what we'll do. I mean, the village spends a considerable amount of money on monitoring. We have been especially cooperative with Eagle, and Eagle has unfettered access onto that property to do testing, to do surveillance, to do monitoring, to do all of those things. And so that's where we're at. So we look forward to getting that formal report from Eagle, from Ms. Etheridge. We also look forward to the community meeting, which she will conduct in the community, and we will be sure to give council advance notice of when that meeting is, just as soon as we get the date. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Mr. Gildner, do you have anything for us?
I mentioned last month that I'm representing the village in defense of a lawsuit brought by Greenstones. Greenstones was one of the applicants for one of the 2 slots for licenses for marijuana facilities. Greenstone recently filed an amended complaint. They filed suit several months ago. They amended their paperwork in late November. I just filed an answer to that amended complaint just a few days ago. The upshot of their complaint is that they contend that the village council at the time did not deliberate fairly and openly in awarding those 2 licenses. They speculate because there was no discussion when each of the council at that time nominated their top 2, that there must be some, backdoor discussions in violation of the Open Meetings Act. It's pure speculation, and it didn't happen. But that's the essence of their complaint. I sent some discovery to them last month. Their deadline for responding to it is Thursday. Once I get their their answers. My intention is to ask the court to dismiss that lawsuit on what's called a motion for summary disposition. Once that's filed, I'll get a hearing date. I'll let all of you know, but in the meantime, it's just in the system and under control. Happy to answer any questions about that or anything else. That's the only thing I wanted to bring to your attention.
In the event that that is dismissed, is there the potential for Greenstones to pay the village's attorney's fees?
Very unlikely. The only way someone like that can be responsible for our fees is if a court determines that their case is frivolous. And every defendant thinks a case is frivolous, but in the eyes of a judge, it's a very, very high standard.
Sure. Thank you.
Do we have any other lawsuits pending?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Bigger.
No, nothing really to add to my written report. I did bring copies of the 2023 collection calendar from Republic and left copies on the table if anybody would like one.
Thank you.
I also put it in your packets, but I brought extra copies if anyone is interested.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bigger. Board and commission updates and council comment. Ms. Kyer.
Yeah, so we just had our parks meeting last month. They don't have meetings in November and December, so this was our first one back from the holidays. We had our election of officers. We set our park cleanup for April. March, we're going to go around and determine which park needs the most cleanup, essentially. So anybody who's looking to volunteer, that will be available in April, and I'll put some more stuff out about that. We are looking into kayak rentals for Waterworks Park. We're talking to a company about that. We're finishing up our master plan. We didn't really have to change all that much. There were just a few adjustments that they had to make. So right now that's kind of in the final, it's just got to get typed up essentially. We have an open seat on our board. So again, if anybody is interested, please fill out an application. We also went over a grant for a national fitness course that we're potentially looking at maybe in Cyclone, but it's got a lot of moving parts. So we're looking into a couple different grant opportunities. There's some Spark grants. First round has already closed, but there are second and third round grants for 2023, so hopefully we can look into those, and some just other rec grants like Mr. Burton alluded to. There's some other ones in there for infrastructure, bathrooms, those kind of things. So hopefully we can look into some of that good stuff.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kinnaman.
Planning Commission did not meet in December, and they will be meeting on the date that we talked about.
It's a pop quiz.
Yeah. And on that date, we will be reviewing plans for the Marathon Station at the corner of Grange Hall and Saginaw North Holly. They will be bringing their plans for a complete redesign there that will allow for a turn lane and a new building and new pumps and the whole shot there. So that will be coming up. On a personal thing, my vote is not against you as a person. I would not take something like that, give up a job to take something like that. There's an opening on parks, that doesn't require giving up a position. I had talked with you before about that possibility, and I know there are some time conflicts with that, but some of those could be worked out, when you're on there. So I'm not opposed to appointing you to something, but I just think that giving up a job for something like that is not a wise, in my opinion. You know, and then Chamber of Commerce, we have our annual dinner in just over a week and a half. Village Council, you received something in your packet with invitation. Just a note that has to be back to me Thursday so that I can tabulate it all on Friday morning and get it to venue 111. Anyone in the audience, this is one of those events that the Chamber invites the community to. Today we selected our annual award recipients, and lips are locked until the dinner. If you want to know who they are, come to the dinner. And good things coming. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kinnaman. Madam President Pro Tem.
Ethics Committee is meeting next Tuesday.
In here.
In here, at 6. I have a question. This Falk Road signage. My question is about the, pardon?
Fencing too.
My question is about this procedure. So these test results that we're waiting on, is it what those results say that would determine maybe what goes on the signs?
Well, so currently, there was, unless they've been removed, there is no trespassing signs that is on the property. That is private property of the village, so nobody should be on there, although we know that people do get on there. Whether the property is fenced 360 around it, you know, I'm not sure you're still going to keep people out of there if they want to go in. The property is fenced along the road line, along Falk Road. It opens up to allow an easement for one of the residents to get back to their house on the north side of the property.
I guess I was picturing warning signs of a different nature or something in regards to Mr. Feeney's concerns. So I would be open to having a conversation with you at your convenience, Mr. Feeney. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Perkins.
HDC meets on Thursday. I just wanted to pass along condolences to a very long-standing Holly resident passed on Saturday, Hilda Atkinson, 97 years old, and I don't know if you knew her, but she was something, and she's going to be missed. That's all.
Thank you. Ms. Musgrave.
Community Development will be meeting on February the 8th at 7 o'clock p.m. here, and nothing else.
6 p.m., correct?
6 p.m.
6 p.m.
Did I say 8?
7.
7,
Yeah.
6 p.m., yeah.
6 p.m. Yep. Thank you. Mr. Harrington.
I have nothing at this time.
Oh. Personnel and Finance did not meet. The DDA Board did meet yesterday evening. Just a couple of highlights from that meeting that will interest our residents. For one thing, we were selected by the National Downtown Development Authority to mentor a municipality in Florida. This is a town which is very much like our own. Apparently, they admired the work of Mr. Klemp so much that they selected us for that role. Visit Detroit toured Holly during the Dickens Festival, and also in good news, Andy's Place and the Holly Hotel have their building permits, so we will be seeing progress being made on those very, very soon. And also, the Moose Lodge and Creative Fashions in Battle Alley will be opening their doors back up very, very soon. So that is all that I have as far as my report. Is there anything further from council or from staff? All right, thank you very much. Happy New Year, everyone. We are adjourned.
Is Lori Lacy here? I didn't see.
No.
She is not here tonight.
Okay.